Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.
Greetings and thank you for joining my community organizer show live from New York City. My name is Sheikh Musa Drammeh. I am your host. Behind the scene is the executive producer, Mutiu Olawuyi. Today, the topic is the continuation of our Bronx economic revolution activities. We are extremely honored and excited to be announcing, updates as to this campaign. First, let me begin by giving you the genesis of this campaign, which is Bronx Economic Revolution. Bronx, for those of you who need to be reminded of, especially our leaders, elected officials in particular, is part of New York City. And New York City is the wealthiest, largest, and most prominent, city in the nation, in the union. This is where decisions are made. This is where powers, pretty much started. Anybody who's running for president or governor from anywhere, New York is a go-to before they even announce anything. Because wherever there's an influence, power, prestige, or money, then New York is the destination to validate whatever objective you're going after. Therefore, we needed to remind everyone that Bronx is part of New York City and therefore should be part of this privilege, this prestige, this power. But unfortunately, Bronx, when it comes to those attributes, it's not part of New York City. And that is why, us, people like me and many other leaders, past and present, have always embarked on reminding our decision makers about this simple and most basic fact. We are part of New York City, therefore we should be part of the privilege. That was really the genesis of launching Bronx Economic Revolution. Now, the revolution, as we had indicated in the past, is based on several pillars. Number one, we want to increase ownership, commercial property ownership, residential property ownership, business startup, and financial independence. As of today, almost 90%, I would say 85% to 90% of Bronxites do not own their residential homes, meaning that we are a county of renters. We rent from landlords who are overwhelmingly, if not all of them, are absentee landlords. These are absentee landlords who accumulate so much buildings and power in the Bronx and spread out their investment throughout the Bronx. And some of these buildings are in horrible conditions because they don't live in it. Their family don't live in it. All they want to do is maximize their profit, minimize the expenses of maintaining this building in the expense of their tenants. we said this should never ever be tolerated. Number one, we should not tolerate absentee landlord. Number one. Number two, we should not tolerate, deteriorating living conditions for these hardworking, tenants who are making richer and richer and richer by the day to these absentee landlords who happen to be, by the way, live in some of the most expensive, exclusive, gated communities anywhere except in the Bronx, whether it's the Long Island, you name it, where they live, where their family live, where their children go to school, where their wives and whatever shopping is completely the opposite of the reality in the Bronx. We said this is not sustainable. We cannot continue to be a county that is 85% renters. Where is the ownership? And then, we said we're going to launch this revolution. So when people own, they become more concerned about what goes on in their communities. Public safety, quality of life, property improvement, you name it. When you own something, you want to protect it. And therefore, anything that threatens the value or the quality or the safety, then you will be the first, defender of it. But when you are renting, then, that connection to the community is pretty much not there, because you don't know whether your lease going to be renewed next year or 2 years, or whether your business lease will be renewed. So therefore, you're always, sitting on an egg. And when you are in those conditions, the least concern you will have is what goes on in the community. Even though you're living there, you're working there, but you really don't own anything. And those people are more vulnerable to gentrification, because whatever it is, when somebody bought the building, somebody bought the business, whatever, you're out. Because sometimes they come up with jack up the lease, jack up the rent, and make up all kinds of expenses that you cannot afford. Then guess what? You're out of the community. No matter how established you've been there, no matter what you invest there, you're out of there. So these are all elements of absentee landlord type of situations that, we have in the Bronx. And because, 85% of the Bronx sites are renters, then unfortunately the quality of life cannot be maintained, because the people who own the buildings live in the best quality of life neighborhoods and communities, but they don't care about the Bronx. And, because quality of life deteriorates, then public safety nightmare becomes, the default factor, because, you have people committing all kinds of crimes: murder, rape, assault, stealing, robbing, and all kinds of, unacceptable, activities, taking place in the Bronx. And so we said we have to make change. And so we will increase ownership. That's why we advise those who are in a housing project, especially absentee landlord type of arrangements, organize and take the buildings, from these absentee landlords and convert them into shareholding, arrangement, either cooperation or condominium, but turn the building from renting to owning. This way, you're building equity, you're improving, your investment opportunities, and you are more mindful of the quality of life, and you are safeguarding public safety, all the elements that make, a community livable and workable and ideal for investment. When you become owner, you will be part of the solution, not somebody who is concerned whether your lease or your rental agreement will be extended or how much and stuff like that. So we increase ownership. This way we increase ownership in the Bronx. Ownership in your homes and businesses also is ownership in the Bronx. You are owning part of the Bronx, and therefore you pay more attention and you are more concerned about what goes on in the Bronx, including legislative, bills that are passed and debated. Are they adding values? Are they improving quality of life? Are they improving educational attainment? Are they, improving the overall living condition of the Bronx. And if the answer is no, then you will become part of the lobbying force, making sure that these bills will not pass. So all I'm saying is that once you become owner of something, then you become the guardian of its protection, and that is across the board. And that's why we part of that Bronx overall economic. I mean, not Bronx economic revolution. One of the pillars. Now, I talk about gentrification, and about 20 years ago, I was invited in Harlem. Imagine that, about 20 years ago, to talk about, because I was in real estate and I was in insurance and I was an investment banker. So they invited me to talk about, the problem of gentrification, because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Harlem, started seeing, new faces and new projects and new architectural schematic designs, and people were very concerned because they realized that things are about to happen and that will affect the long-term residents, and that's exactly what happened. So one of the things that I never forget that I told them, I asked the audience, what do you think is the best way to fight gentrification? And they come up with all kinds of answers. We need to talk to our elected officials so that this and that, whatever. And at the end, I told them, no, the only solution to gentrification is ownership. Nothing else. Everything else is short term. But ownership will protect you from being gentrified. Therefore, whatever activity that we embark on, it must first begin with increasing ownership. Let us own the buildings in Harlem. Let us own the businesses in Harlem. Let us own the apartments in Harlem. Let us even own the schools in Harlem. When we own these, spaces, then nobody can gentrify us. Even if they live next door to us, they cannot gentrify. But if you don't own, no matter what type of rental arrangement, even if it's a rent regulation, sooner or later, you will be out. And unfortunately, we're seeing, that reality. But anyway, ownership, but how one secure ownership? Well, education. Now, this is the topic that I want to talk to you about today. I want to concentrate on this show today on education. I want to dedicate it to education because biblically, we've been taught by pastors. I'm not a Bible. I don't know anything about the Bible, but because I live among the pastors and ministers who are consistently reminding us certain verses in the Bible. One of the verses that they keep telling us, he said that in the Bible there's a saying that my people perish for lack of knowledge. That's what I heard from the pastors, and they said it's in the Bible. So if that is the case, my people perish for lack of knowledge, then we don't need any other reference to make our point clear. My people perish for lack of knowledge. So that means the survival of people depends on having knowledge. The survival of a community depends on having knowledge. The survival of a city, of a state, of a nation depends on having knowledge. And nothing could be truer and more profound and more accurate and more empowering and more relevant than that. My people perish for lack of knowledge. So I just want this to be internalized, how powerful and profound it is to encourage people to accumulate knowledge. And there is a case in Chicago. The Chicago police department was fighting the vices in Chicago, drug dealing and, gang problems and violence and rapes and robberies, including prostitution. And as much training as, they were getting in terms of knowing how to fight these vices, they were not effective as experts. And what they end up doing is, they hired a madam, a former prostitute, who understood the street so well, understood the business, understood the mechanism of prostitution, understood every single aspect of it, and they hired her as the lead officer dealing with prostitution. And she was the most effective officer dealing with it because this was her industry, her area of expertise. And because she had the knowledge, she was effective. All I'm saying is that whatever we're going after, we must have the knowledge of it. If not, then we perish. That's why this biblical code verse is very profound, and I believe that that alone can save a nation. Now, even if we look at, historically, we look at, for example, gunpowder. We all know that the gunpowder that we use for bombing, whatever, this thing came from China. But guess what? Because England or the United Kingdom had the ability to look at what was present and then turn it into something extremely more powerful. And they were able to take China's gunpowder and turn it into bombs. Because UK was already known to be a kingdom that pretty much dominated the world in terms of their, expansion, empire expansion all over the world. So they were able to accumulate as much knowledge of navigation in the water, knowledge of geography, knowledge of culture, knowledge of ethnicity, all these things. And wherever they go, they can incorporate it into what they have already known and then continue to build the arsenal of knowledge and continue to expand their empire. And therefore, when they were introduced to gunpowder, they saw the potential and they had the ability, the technical know-how to take it to a next level and dominate it. And then, the story goes on. Now, let's come back to the Bronx in terms of knowledge. Bronx is made up of over 80% or more, 80 to 90% of Bronxites are now minorities, Blacks and Latinos and Asians. About 10 to 15% maybe whites, but more than 2/3 of the Bronx side, the demographics are minorities. When we look back, before I came on the show, I was double checking, Google, because Google is now our help. It can take you to many universities and, museums and historical documents. And I read about the business ownership among the Black Americans during Jim Crow, right after Reconstruction, because the Civil War was fought because of slavery, Northern states and versus Southern states for slavery. So after the Southern states lost, then blacks were freed. But when you're freed without any education, because you were prohibited, there was literacy ban. So therefore, you're free, but you don't have the competitive advantage or tools, for things. But nonetheless, and this is the point that I want to make, nonetheless, because now they're free and they understand that their survival and success depends on accumulating knowledge, they now embark on imparting knowledge to everybody. And because of that, when Jim Crow, system was implemented, they turned the small literacy groupings into business startup nation. And because you have segregated, nation where blacks are not allowed certain places. Therefore, what blacks did, they say, well, if we cannot use white facilities and businesses and tools, we create ours, and they created. And they said during Jim Crow, there were more black business ownership than even now. Why? Because of knowledge. I'm saying this to say that, we have to go back to this is also true in voting, because we've seen documentaries showing us blacks lining up in some of the most treacherous weathers because they were able to vote. And they said, since we can vote, we are not going to squander this opportunity. And they sacrificed so much, to vote, because they knew voting was the most powerful force for change. And they said that since it is the most powerful force for change, we cannot squander it. We're going to vote. And even if we don't always agree with the candidates, we don't always like the candidates, but casting our ballots will count within our community of voters, and they were voting. And because of that, you have, self-representation. All I'm saying is that knowledge allowed them to do that. And so many other areas where I can talk about, all of us know, just to prove that having knowledge is, empowering, is independent, is freedom. And not having knowledge is always being encircled, being oppressed, and being relegated to the last, pillars of society. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because Bronx, as I open the show with, is part of New York City. New York City is the most influential city in the nation, and I would even say in the world. And the reason for that is because knowledge. Because this is where decision makers come and to be guided into successful journey, whether it's a political journey, whether it's a business journey, whether it is whatever it is, they will come and sit down with some of the most knowledgeable, brainiac individuals that can walk them through a path for success, and all because they have the knowledge. And this is where the New York Stock Exchange, this is where NASDAQ, this is where the power is. And now the entertainment industry, the legal industry, the publishing, and you name it, they call New York home. There are so many Fortune 500 companies and leaders. Even if the company is headquartered someplace that the leaders usually have, house, apartments, and co-ops and condominiums in Midtown Manhattan, or different places. So all because of knowledge. So for us now, to change the status quo of the Bronx and bring the Bronx to be part of New York City rightfully, we must do one thing and one thing alone. We must educate Bronxites. We must invest in education. We must focus on education, and we must not accept a failing school. And we must reject pipeline to prison, and we must reject that Bronxites cannot learn. We must say no to the ranking. The best high school in the Bronx we have is the Bronx Science. It ranked 37 nationwide. As a matter of fact, the top 20 best public schools, none in New York City, none in New York in general. The top 20, none in New York, not New York State, not New York City. And I think the 26 to 27 comes with Bed-Stuy and Brooklyn Tech and Bronx Science and whatever, but the top 20, none. If we are to challenge India, we are to challenge China, we are to challenge ourselves, then we have to be competitive with them in education. China graduates 4.5 million STEM students a year. 4.5 million Chinese students graduate from STEM schools. India graduates 2.5 million STEM graduates a year. United States, about 800,000. And even the 800,000, you will find overwhelming majority of them are Chinese and Indian students. Even in the United States, the 800,000 STEM graduates, you will find that overwhelming majority of the same students are Chinese and Indians. So in order for us to be competitive, we have to tunnel vision education. And education, not only just education, but quality education from day one. With people, right now there's a case, I think in Boston, where a young scholar who graduate and get honor and then get a scholarship, but she cannot read. And now she's suing the school system. She graduated with honor, she got scholarships, and she can't read. How did that happen? Well, I'm not surprised, because for the past 24 years, I have been in the education system, and I do know all this promotional thing. They have all kinds of tricks to passing people from grade to grade without knowing a damn thing. Because they want to please this, they want to get this funding, they want to be part of this and that. But the last focus is the student education. They will do all tricks and dance to making sure that, 80% of our students graduate. Well, how many of them can actually read at level? Maybe 10%. So we need to change this. We need to change this self-defeatist attitude of not prioritizing good education. And so this is what we're suggesting, and this is backed by experience, being a New Yorker, and then running a school and knowing the psychic of parents, knowing the environment, and knowing the capacity and the capability and the potential of students, what they can achieve, and knowing where we are. What we're suggesting is this. Based on 24 years of running a K-12 school in New York City, in the Bronx, gave us the greatest window to the educational system and to what is possible and what is missing, and the force and the potential behind providing the best educational attainment for students. We're proposing for our mayor and elected officials to launch STEMmed-up schools in the 5 boroughs, starting from the Bronx. What is STEMmed-up? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, diversity, unity, and peace. It is a school system in which its curriculum has been written and has been one of the most innovative curricula ever put together by New Yorkers. And if we're going to continue to be the greatest city, then we have to empower our next generation. We should not import them. We should produce them. And in order for us to produce them, then we have to educate them. And that is, in a nutshell, what STEMmed-up is. Making sure that the AI of the future, everything that concerns science, technology, and engineering, and maintaining our infrastructure and our competitiveness globally, STEMmed-up is the answer. Why did we add diversity, unity, and peace in addition to STEM? Well, because of New York City. This is the most, not only the biggest, most influential, wealthiest, but it is also the most diversity in the nation. And in order for us to continue to benefit from this diversity, then we have to create this type of healthy relationships and peaceful coexistence, so that the diversity will not be liability, but protection and advancement and beauty. That's why, the curriculum incorporates the elements of diversity as human family and unity without uniformity and peaceful coexistence. We are extremely honored to be commissioned by God to be able to do this thing. And we are now working fervently to convince our elected officials to making sure that every county in New York City has at least one STEMmed-up school. But the starting point is where it is needed the most, in the Bronx. And Mayor Eric Adams and all our elected city council members, our state assembly members, our state senators, our Congress members, we are appealing to you to create an education revolution in New York City, especially in the Bronx. That is the panacea. Everything else, subsidizing this, subsidizing that, reduce this, reduce that, lowering this, lower that, these are all nothing gimmick. The permanent solution to where we are, where it's a quality of life, economic development, public safety, you name it, is education, good education. Because when you empower young scholars, you watch them rise and take their rightful leadership positions. You don't have to subsidize their living anymore because they are producers. But if we continue to look at things in a subsidized way, your food subsidized, your apartment subsidized, your transportation subsidized, everything subsidized, who's producing? Who's elevating? Who's being independent? Who's being free? Who's being so intelligent? And we need now to move from subsidized living to independent living. And that is where the education revolution comes in. And we are more than happy to have this discussion with all of you and to show you that it is good education. It's the panacea, not only in the Bronx, but in New York City. And good education is what our young scholars are not getting. Only special schools are producing young scholars. All the other schools are either social promotion or pipeline to delinquency. It is time to invest in the protection of our future, which is protection of the educational attainment of our young scholars. Nothing else will work. The gentrification will continue on, and soon New York will be empty of Black people if we don't do the right thing now. Because if they can't afford it, if we used to say 25 to 30% of our income, should be used for housing expenses, but now the housing expense is more than our income. Actually, it's not even percentage, over 100%. Maybe our house expense is 105, 50%. That is unsustainable. We can live here. That's why people are now no longer, they either in the shelters or they either, move out or commit crime. So my fellow New Yorkers, elected officials and decision makers and educators and parent advocates and community activists, let us come together and make education revolution with STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. If we do that, then we will no longer be threatened by China or India or any other nation that have been sending their young scholars to do the job that we are neglecting to empower our own children, to be able to do. This is common sense. And this is what we're asking. Education revolution in New York City, particularly in the Bronx. But STEMmed up is what needs to be standardized in the city. STEMmed up: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, diversity, unity, and peace. If we do that, we'll continue to maintain the status of the greatest city in the world, because we have so many of our children who are not getting the benefit of being New Yorkers. That should change, and education will change it. And STEMmed up will guarantee, our control of the status quo, of the status of being the greatest, most influential city. If we don't do it, we're going to continue to deal with crime and violence and, public safety nightmare, deteriorating quality of life, and people moving out of a lot of districts and, the city in general. And we cannot sustain that, because this is the greatest place. And let's make all New York children be the inheritor of the leadership, whatever leadership. They should not be out of here because their parents cannot afford to live here. They should be the catalyst for maintaining the greatest city status. And education will provide that. And education is what we're embarking on. And we ask all of you, if you have any question, whatever, please talk to us. We don't want sugarcoating education. There are a lot of schools, a lot of programs. They don't work because there are a lot of special interests. Because we monetize our problems. Somebody say, oh, there's no, the spelling school, I'm going to come to school. Then you find out that the CEO is making $400,000, $300,000. We don't want that. We want genuine messenger of change. People who are not there for the money or recognition, but for there as a solution to the problems. There, you talk about anything, they say, oh, no, we're doing it here, we're doing it there. It doesn't work. We want the solution, and the solution is education, and education through stand-up. Thank you, and God bless you. And you can always reach out to us for any question or any concern. My telephone number is 718-822-5600. 5555. 718-822-5555. Again, Stand Up Institute is the organization that is advocating education revolution. Stand Up Institute. And the website is standup.org. Standup.org. Thank you and God bless you. See you later.
Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.